I started injecting heroin when I was 15.
What was the progression of that like for you?
When you're hooked, you're hooked. Oh, please give me one more chance, please give me one more chance. I swear to God I won't do it again, I'm really, really sorry. And I started selling drugs again.
What's big time?
5-10 kilos a week. You know, the police caught 20 kilos belonging to me. Cocaine, San Francisco. I robbed drug dealers for a living.
How hard is it then to get out of that sort of stuff?
I got kidnapped. I had 200 quid in my pocket and 3 black bags full of clothes. That was all I had in the world. The day I get out of bed and not make my bed before I come downstairs is the day I fuck up.
Theo, welcome to Class A People.
I'm delighted to be here, thank you.
Very happy to have you. Kind of under some sad circumstances, really, but just for people who don't know, I think it's probably good to give a bit of backstory.
Yeah.
So, it starts off really quite lovely and funny. When I first started documenting sobriety, I didn't have very many followers, so I was able to reply to direct messages, and one of the direct messages that came through was from a young man called Sam. And he had no profile photo, by the way, so I had no idea what this person looked like. I didn't know how old they were. I just knew that he'd been on holiday, it had all gone wrong, and he needed to make some changes.
Yeah.
And I was responding to him, and we were chatting away, and I think 2 weeks later he told me, I'm going to come over to it was from Dublin, and he said, I'm going to come over to the UK. My uncle Theo, actually he would say, my uncle Theo, is a drug support worker. And that was it. And I heard nothing more. And then I was going to a CA meeting, and on the stairs, vaping away, I got out the car, Hannah! I went, sorry.
Who's this?
I was like, well, that's not the usual person that's usually here. It was like, Hannah, it's me, Sam. And I was like, Sam who? And he went, Sam from TikTok. I went, no way. I couldn't believe it.
Either could I.
I mean, it's not like he knew. I didn't ever say that I went CA. I didn't. He didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, of all the places, when I'm reading this message, oh, I'm coming over to the UK. I thought, well, the UK is a big place.
Yeah.
And that was the meeting, and that was the place.
I know. He came home that night, and you know, it was he just couldn't wait to tell us. And I'm thinking, you know, there's a spiritual aspect to recovery, I think. You know, and I was thinking at the time, you know, well, I actually did say to him, when he was chatting, I said, no, we have a thing that we call, I don't know whether you've heard it, called a 13-stepper.
Yes.
Then I said, you don't become a 13-stepper. Yeah. A 13-stepper is someone that go look for vulnerable women or get into relationships with you know, the opposite sex or whatever. These days you have to be careful what you say. And it's never good, you know. And
no, I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, you know. And that was my worry, you know. So it kind of that was a really, really interesting thing to happen.
He was like an excited little puppy, you know, trying to actually get him to sit down and focus on the meeting. But we had a lot of laughs. We really did. Like, I know you're not really supposed to talk about things that happen in the rooms, but there was this one time where, unfortunately, a man had come and he sat in front of me and Sam. Have you heard this?
Yeah, he told me the story. Yeah, he did.
And it was like, so the chair is like, you know, the back of the chair is there, and then you've got the seat. So the whole of you've got that part that's open, and this man's the whole arse was out of his trousers. How are you supposed to not laugh at that?
Exactly.
Come on. And that was it. And we couldn't, you know, like at school when you know you're not supposed to laugh, it was that type of laughing,
that's what I was just thinking,
which I haven't had in years, by the way. So I was like, I don't care if I get kicked out of this meeting, it's too funny. And he was just sat next to me, and you didn't even need to look at each other, just the shaking of the shoulders and the trying to not, the breathing. And then another friend of ours, she got asked to do read out the promises. She just couldn't do it. She was like, I didn't. So you know, that was that. And then he went to football with Eamon, and he'd messaged me just saying how happy he was that he could go, and he didn't drink. And there was this wallpaper in there that had like fake windows, so like the wallpaper had the window on, and it was Eamon and him just prattling around, and he was just saying how lovely it was that he could do that now.
And I think that's what really saddens me, because I do it, and maybe I shouldn't, but I go back through texts that I've had with to and from with Sam, and and his last text was, all is not lost, So he had a couple of little blips in his time, in his recovery where he kind of felt maybe that he couldn't tell me, but I found out because I'm a drug worker.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't sure whether to mention that because there were a few times when obviously he had said to me, I think because he went to America, didn't he?
He went to New York, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that ended in tears as well, unfortunately for him.
But I didn't ever want to say. I didn't know he knew that, but anyway.
Yeah.
But
I think just getting back to what I was saying, I think the saddening part about it was he had just starting to get it right. He was back in Dublin. He was back to work. I'd gone over and talked through his lapse with his mum and dad and kind of not confronted him on it, but I left the door open for him to actually say, actually I did find some cocaine when I was in, I did use it, and because that's really a good part with recovery. It's about owning up,
100%.
And trying to give him that, time to think about his addiction, think about that it's okay to talk about it, it's okay if you lapse. I see so many people that when they relapse, they don't want to tell me because they feel they let me down as I'm the recovery worker, and it's just human nature.
But I think that's a really common thing that I've noticed with addicts. Is like we're very empathetic and quite, we're sensitive people, and we're people pleasers. We quite, we care about what people maybe think, and there is quite a big stigma around relapse, I think, because it's those labels.
Yeah.
Like sober, relapse, doesn't take away all the work that you've done in the days that you were sober.
And you know what, you're absolutely right in saying that, because that's the conversation I had with Sam. Say he had done 30 days sober before he messed up. He still had those 30 days. And it's not like the snakes and ladders thing where you go all the way back to zero again and have to start that journey again.
I think the days thing makes you kind of feel like that. But yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know. I was a serial relapser for age. I mean, I did 30 days in 2020 and then went out for 4 years, and that was that.
Yeah.
I just went, not for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to, I guess, finishing just that story is that Sam then, we built up a relationship which was lovely, and then he went home back to Ireland, and I heard from him a few times, and then I very sadly had a direct message from Rhiannon, Sam's sister, to say that there'd been a really tragic accident and that he had been hit by a car whilst going on a bike ride, and that he was in hospital on life support.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't quite believe, to be honest, because 3 days prior to that, we'd been talking about the Wu-Tang Clan and how he couldn't believe that I listened to the Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really caught me off guard. And
Shock.
I felt very far away from it. It was quite...
yeah.
And I'd done a video with their permission that the day that I found out, and it was incredible, really, because that's the power of how social media can be amazing. I think it went viral and got 2 million views, and Eamon then commented on the video, and everyone was sending their love. Then people who had known Sam were messaging on that video and exchanging stories. I then had an amazing email from a woman who had met Sam on the train on her way to work.
Wasn't that lovely?
Which I just thought was that is how she perceived him in those couple of mornings.
Yeah.
Is the exactly what he is. Like, she just, he was that person that would just say hi.
Oh yeah.
And but you'd probably miss your stop to work. You'd just carry on chatting with him.
Yeah. I think he may have done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
I think where he just got lost in conversation with people. But the lovely thing about it was kind of for a total stranger on a bus.
Yeah.
And her response, when she wasn't sure, and she says, "I just need to know whether should I stop looking out for him in the mornings? So here's a woman getting on the train to go to work every day and hoping that, or wondering that, I wonder will that nice chap, you know, Sam, because he shook hands, gave his name, he's like that, you know. And I just thought it was really lovely that from her point of view, the fact that she would have continued to look out for him unless she found out that actually something really tragic had happened.
But to have that much of an effect on someone in such a short space of time that they then wonder where you are, if you're okay, and then go and look at the Dublin death
I'm not quite sure how this
she
girl
went
found.
and found
Yeah,
it. She went to go and look because she'd seen on the news that a young 24-year-old boy from Dublin had died. So she went on this registry, I think, a death registry.
Oh yeah, there would be a death registry.
And that's how she found out.
You
but
know,
then to take the time to then send that message, like that, to have that impact as a human being, I mean,
it's amazing, isn't it?
and I think, regardless of the fact that he had troubles with drink and drugs, like really, like that's how he went out. Like he went out with that effect on strangers. That effect on me. That effect on people in CA. I listened to some of the stuff that obviously was read out at his funeral.
that was a very healing time for me, but I think in particular for his mum and dad and Rhiannon and Jude, because we filled the church and there was people outside, you know, sort of that couldn't fit in the church, you know, and
I've got a bone to pick with you all though, because you do that very quickly over there.
I think it's better.
Oh, I didn't have any time. I was like,
well, I know, yeah, I know. No, I get that. People need to kind of, you know, but the flip side to that for me is I struggle when, and particularly, you know, in the kind of system that we work in, the job I do, people die, you know. I try to make it to their funerals because 9 times out of 10, you'd be nearly the only person there because everyone's just, abandoned them, So for me, that bit's a bit like, you know, someone dies and then 5-6 weeks later you'd have the funeral, and I don't know, I think the Irish way is the best way.
I actually agree with that. I'm just being selfish in the fact that I couldn't get over there.
Yeah, I hear you. But the funeral...
But it looked amazing. They sent me some of the footage.
You know, it was very sad, obviously, but it showed how much Sam was able to reach people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where you just, a 24-year-old, I will never get anyone like that at my funeral. Well, I'm not going to get that the turnout that he got, you know, and mainly young people. And I remember talking about it afterwards and saying, the planet's safe with the young people. You know, you worry about young people. But actually, what it showed me was that, you know, young people got together and still do. Look at the mural that they did for.
Oh my God, amazing!
You know, it's like for a lad of 24, he made an impression. He left his mark. You know, and I think I'm hoping that, you know, Eamon and Samantha and Jude and Rhiannon and that, you know, hold on to that. Yes, we didn't have him for long, but at the time we did have him, he made a big impact. Yeah. He really did,
And I think what's so special about it is that there was no discrepancy on, you know, how I spoke about him as opposed to how some of his friends who messaged me spoke about him. Like he was who he was, you know, like you know, like an excited puppy. Like the way I would describe him was exactly how other people would message me about him. So he was himself. He unapologetically so, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. There's another little story that I don't know you may have heard about the funeral.
Okay.
And so, you know, he's in the coffin at the funeral home, and you know, people are coming to, you know, have a last look, say goodbye, whatever. And there was a woman that nobody knew, and she was sat in the corner in floods of tears. And my family were thinking, is she in the right room? Is it, you know, like no one knows this woman, you know. And I can't remember. Somebody went over and said, "Are you okay there, lovely? Are you sure you're in the right room?" And she said, "Oh, I'm in the right room, okay." She says, "I was at the scene of the accident. I saw it happen. I got out of my car and I held Sam's hand and said, Mammy and Daddy are coming." Wow. And for her to actually come to that, you know, the removal, as we call it, was just really significant, you know, again, of how this woman, the only thing that was in common was she had a 24-year-old son, you know, and she was crying more than most of us. You know what I mean? It really affected her, and I just again thought, you know, well, like the girl that went to look him up, see, you know, where's Sam? He's not on the train anymore. This woman did the same. She found out, you know, the who's, what's, whys, and took herself to pay her respects to a chap who she saw die and hold his hand. That was really, you know, lots of things like that have gone on, you know, that you just wouldn't dream of. You just wouldn't think, wow. So that was Sam. That's the person he
Just so people who, because obviously people who don't know Sam know, so he was on a bike ride.
Yeah.
And he was hit by a car.
Well, here we go. So he went to work. He worked in a bank and sort of a place. There was a power cut. Oh, everyone has to go home. We can't do any work today. There's no power. Won't be fixed till tomorrow. So he went home, and the story is that he decided he was going to go out on his e-bike. And himself and his friend went out for a cycle. Now, he had an e-bike, and his friend had an ordinary push bike. So off they went, and then they came to this big junction on the N11 in Dublin, and there's a pedestrian bridge, which when they got there, the chap on the push bike said, I'm going to take the bridge, I can carry my bike, excuse me. Sam had no choice, you know, you're not supposed to use the bridge for e-bikes, nor was he going to hump it up the stairs,
they're heavy
right?
as well, aren't they?
So what did he say to his friend? I'll see you on the other side, were his last words. Now, you know, how poignant is that to say, you know, for that, and then the story goes that his friend was halfway over the bridge and he heard the unmerciful thump, you know, and I mean, like, from what I gather, he was hit really hard. You know, the injuries were consistent with a car that was travelling at maybe faster than it should have been, you know. Broken legs, broken arm. I mean, he was broken. He was smashed to pieces, really, you know. And I completely understand that the woman who was involved in the accident with him took it very badly, and I imagine when because he held on for 12 days. He wasn't letting go.
Of course he did. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
He wasn't, you know, and the odds were stacked against him.
Yeah.
You know, really and truly. And that's when I fell out with your man upstairs, because I said, you owe me a miracle here.
Yeah.
And I didn't get my miracle, so my kind of...
Well, I want to talk about that bit before we sort of go into your story.
Yeah.
But it is hard when it's that injustice where sometimes your addict brain can sort of come back into play a bit and be like, sorry, but I've done all of this. I've done all this help for all these other people, and I needed you for one thing. Yeah. And you can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that stuff's, I think, you know, when you do have a faith or a spirituality or whatever it is, that's the stuff that
questions it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when it's sort of something you see on the news that affects you, that's one thing. When it becomes personal, it's a different game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said about the newspaper, you'll glance over a young man, 24, hit on his bike and died, and you know you're still looking for something.
You're like, oh yeah, what a shame, moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
we
know,
all do that.
And it's not going to happen to my family. It never, you know, that's the thing. That's the mindset behind it. So. Yeah.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because like I said that in the video, which is like tomorrow isn't promised, but it is. We are the same the world over, all of us. Like until you yourself get, you know, an illness or someone that you know or is close to you, you know, you always see these things like when people get older and retire and they go, oh, I've got to do my bucket list, and it's like, you know, it's like we have to wait for these either tragic events or retirement or whatever it is to then be like, fuck. Yeah. I've just, you know, glazed through my life thinking I'm going to get another day tomorrow.
True. Yeah.
But then I don't know how you get to feel like this if you don't have it so close as a problem, you know, so close of a...
And that's true.
To feel that emotion.
And if you look at addiction, like when someone's in addiction and using substances, like it's Russian roulette pretty much all the time. You just don't know, you know, like I don't know how I'm still alive.
Yes, so let's get into that.
Okay, so where would you like to start? Or?
Well, you were involved in sort of, we'll call it a pandemic, shall we, of sort of the heroin era of Ireland?
Before then, I was in trouble with stuff.
So how did things start out for you then? Let's sort of go from there.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, I was born and reared in Dublin. I've got an older sister and 2 younger brothers. And we, in our early lives, up to the age of I was 11, we lived with our grandparents, my mum's mum and dad, in a nice little middle-class area of Dublin. And when we were 11, something had happened. There was a fallout, and we moved to Dundrum, which was a council area. We moved into a council house, and I struggled with being 11. The big change, where there was a lot of. You were safe living in Stillorgan. I didn't feel safe in Dundrum at the time.
But why were you living with grandparents and not your?
No, my mum and my dad, the whole family.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, no, my mum, my dad, my sister, and me lived, and Eamon and Trevor, we lived with grandparents and something. The wheels
And your
fell
parents.
And my
Okay,
parents,
fine.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah,
That's
and the
all right.
wheels fell off, and we moved away, and all of a sudden I found myself in a completely different environment. We used to get stopped coming home from school, and the local lads would bully us, and because one of the big things the big things that I didn't do was I didn't move school. I stayed in the school I was in because I only had 1 year left, and then I was moving on to the secondary school. So I hadn't, I was kind of, I suppose the young lads then perceived me as, that, I don't know, you're not allowed into our, it was very territorial. So for me, what I needed to do was, I felt I had an older sister to look out for, and I had a younger brother, Eamon, who used to come to and from school with me, and I felt I had to protect them, where my youngest brother, Trevor, was only a baby at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get in with these lads, and I was coming home from work one day, and you're going to have to fight him, and okay, I'll fight him, and big me had fist fight. I was only 12 at this stage, and I was accepted into, he's all right, accepted in. I feel accepted. Yeah. And then you become part of something. But what I became part of was stealing cars, joyriding, drinking, smoking dope, that kind of staying out all night. And
it's like that thing of, you hear it a lot. When I lived in Brixton and sort of the gang culture there, but it's like they would wait outside the Brixton school because those children, a lot of the children that went to that school, they came from a broken home, so they kind of infiltrate you as a group, a family. We're going to give you love, the stuff that probably maybe they're not getting at home. I'm not saying that's your case, but I'm just saying, like,
no, you want to be part of
but
something.
Also, like, growing up, regardless of anything, like, older people are cool. Like, that's the same the world over, and you want to impress them, and you want to be on the right side of them. That's always been the same case.
And and as a young teenager, I began to enjoy the joyriding, the smoking, the drinking, the girls. But the transition, I think, from sort of a more middle-class area to a working-class area was a big challenge for me.
Especially whilst also going to the middle-class area school, because, they're going to immediately think, posh, or,
take our bus fare off.
Different class,
all that sort of stuff. So I had to kind of, I felt that I had
rough
to
yourself up to sort of fit into the...
And then when I did, I really enjoyed it. Which I think is probably a trait with a lot of people with that addiction. We like risky
100%,
behaviour. And I loved it.
A lot of the time that's more the rush than...
than the substance.
Me myself, it's like when I've had this time now to think back about it, what do I really miss now still, nearly a year on? It's like, I really miss going and picking up drugs. I miss the organisation. I miss the routine, the kind of calling the system I had in place. That's
the full-time job you had.
Literally, and that, or not being able to get it, and then being that person that could get it, and that sort of euphoric feeling like, it's fine, I'm going to get it. I've got it. That is more really than when you do the first light, because then fuck, now I've got to keep up for however long. Now I've got to sustain it.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And then how do you do that? You become better at being bad, I suppose. So didn't take very long where I kind of got a name as being a really good motorbike rider. I love bikes, still drive bikes, still have bikes. And because I trained to be a mechanic, I left school at 15 and trained to be a mechanic. I can get into a car quicker than probably you with your key. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, and back then that was a very useful skill set to have. So I'm getting. My environment was letting me in more. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
We were valuable to them as well, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. They'd always come to me. I started dealing drugs very young. I was very young when I got involved, and you'd start out, and everyone on a Friday night won a bit. And I'd take euro 20, and then I'd go and I'd buy something and I'd get my bit for free. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, then custom starts to get more, and all of a sudden, then you're buying bigger and bigger amounts. And that was one part of my life that after I got clean and stopped using drugs, I didn't step out of criminality straight away. No, it was the early 2000s when I stepped out of criminality.
People say it's quite common knowledge that my drug dealer of 10 years was on the meet and greet of my first CA meeting. Right. That was a time. Yeah. But he sort of says, and we've spoken before, it's really hard when you've created a life for yourself. It's one thing getting sober, but then also realising that those were not your friends who were calling you all the time. Massive. That you have a lifestyle that you've set the tone of with the money that you earn that you don't have anymore.
No. I'd have fingers left over. I was to count how many friends I've got now. True friends, close friends. The rest were just acquaintances. And so that's kind of where it started for me, and that's how I got involved in using substances, selling substances.
How old were you when you first started using?
Heroin.
Either?
I was.
Did you have a gateway?
12.
Did you have a gateway drug?
It's interesting because I'm going to discuss that in a minute. Alcohol, lighter fuel, glue. All the things that were all it was just the substance didn't matter. It was what I wanted to get from it, and and sometimes you knew you're doing something really dangerous. There was a chap, he was only 15, and I think I was about 14 at the time, and he was found dead on the bus station in Dublin where he'd gone on, and he was solvent use, it's called, where the fire extinguishers and it killed him. And that didn't stop me. No. That's not going to happen to me.
Again.
So it's from there on, I suppose. I had this life that I really enjoyed. That the other thing, I suppose, was I was kind of giving the middle finger to my dad at the time as well. When you get to that age, and you rebel and stuff like that. And I went from smoking weed or smoking hash. Then it was, never really took the drinking up. I drank, but that wasn't my cup of tea. Really liked the hash, really liked the scene. And back then, your local dealer was a really nice guy. Yeah, he wasn't part of an organised crime group, that what you have now. So there was no violence involved in dealing, hash at the time. It was all, hey man, how's it going?
Hippy dippy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was no threat with it, and actually it felt okay. And yes, you knew we were breaking the law, but they could never make their mind up about hash, whether it's legal or not. And I was even staying back in, I'm talking about 1975. So 1975, the glam rock scene, the music scene, things like colour television was coming out, you know what I mean, and all these things were happening in my life, and I love my music.
Well, also you didn't have mobile devices, like drug dealing. If you wanted them, you got to get off your fucking ass and go and get them.
Exactly.
Exactly. It wasn't so easy.
No, that's true, and that's. I mean, I do a lot of work around the county drug line stuff, and at the minute, that's absolutely true. It wasn't you.
Bit more effort to go and get your drugs.
You'd meet the guy in a lane somewhere, or he'd probably have it all on him, loads of it on him, and we didn't worry about it. It's fine, and no one was going to rip him off, and you always paid because it was a community type of thing. You're and your mates, and it just expanded for me. And then I got involved in, tried out speed. I never really liked it, but I did it because everyone else was doing it.
Yeah.
But when the heroin hit Dublin, so in the early 80s, it was, heroin was everywhere all of a sudden.
Because I always associate heroin to Scotland.
Benzos in Scotland.
Benzos. Yeah.
Okay. And heroin, but there's Glasgow, I think, is the benzo capital of the world, I think, at the moment. So heroin came flooding in.
And at this point, you're selling, so you're very much in there.
Yeah, and I wasn't selling heroin.
No.
I was selling weed, but I was getting a bit fed up with it, and but then, what's this new drug everyone's taking? And to answer your question about gateway drugs, there was a very high percentage of young people in Dublin that their first drug was heroin.
Wow.
So,
smoking.
Smoking and injecting.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much injecting all the time. And I started injecting heroin when I was 15.
Wow.
I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I would thought, you think, God, it's, like the whole thing was just crazy back then. So 15, I'm on the needle. Found myself a new group of friends that were taking heroin, and the guys that used to smoke the weed and the hash with it or whatever.
Well, you found something that's leveled up. Haven't you? It's like anything.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I really liked heroin. Heroin did for me what I think I needed to happen for me, because I was a bit complex maybe as a kid, and a lot of kind of stuff that maybe I suffered with, a lot of emotional pain. I could never live up to my dad's expectations in my head, and that was really, really difficult for me. So when you take heroin, it's not just the physical pain how it goes away, your emotional pain goes away. And guess what? It's really cool to be walking around with track marks. You're the big guy, you know what I mean? Like, and and that's what happened. And then it went from bad to worse. It went to.
Seems to be quite a common thing with men, sons and dads, and this pride thing, wanting to make your dad proud. And I feel like the more I do these conversations, and even my own story, my mum used to say to me, like, why is it with you and your brother that it's so much more prominent that you would need your dad to say it? And I said, because I always know that you are. And it's like,
that's fair enough.
Then the more learnings I've done, it's that women, regardless of like whatever anyone thinks about males and females, right? Women have not had the same generational trauma that men have had. When you think about war, when you think about the fact that, like this sort of like transcendent generational emotional stuff, they are so far behind in talking about, men are only really now being told it's okay to talk about your feelings. I would say in like the last 5 to 10 years. But you've got to remember like what your dad, what his upbringing was like. That's how I sympathise with my situation with my dad.
Yes, we are products of that kind of nature nurture thing, aren't we? And actually, when I said to you, I went out for a coffee with a friend of mine, and he's from Scotland, and he's actually a mental health nurse, and he works in substance misuse. And we're very good friends, and we went out to Combe, we were having a coffee, and we were talking about what we're just talking about now. That we both could identify is that when you wanted to give your dad a hug, it was very, there you go, son. And, like, or if I'd ring, before my dad died, I was living over here, and I'd ring the house. I'd say, oh hi, and he'd pick up the phone, oh hi, and he'd go, oh hi, son, I get your mum, and. She'd come and talk to me on the phone, and my dad loved me. I know he did. Yeah. It was my issue with my head. That was the problem.
It's like something I learned in therapy is like you have an expectation naturally as a child, like what you think your dad should be. Yeah. But like if it's never been on offer, it's it's the fantasy that you kind of maybe have seen your friend have, or what you've seen in a movie or read in a book, and actually that's just the way that they probably just are because of their own upbringing and then their dad's upbringing, and why would they know any other way?
Yeah, exactly. And
some people's argument to that would be like, well, I've had to make loads of changes and I've learnt da 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 da. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, I think I just wanted my dad to be proud of me, you know, and I
Yeah.
wanted to, he was a well-known man in the community. He was a big pair of boots to fill, and we're all Theo. So my granddad's Theo the first, my dad was Theo the second, I'm Theo the third, my son is Theo the fourth, my grandson is Theo the fifth.
Really?
So yeah, so we, you know, yeah, and the oldest boy,
Yeah.
and you know, yeah, there was, and that was a lot of pressure, you know.
And your dad didn't drink?
Never touched alcohol. You know, he never even tasted alcohol, and he was
Why
delighted.
was that?
Sorry,
Why was that? Do you know?
his dad, my grandfather, was fond of the drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and
It's funny,
I
I
mean,
think
he'd been to war and was shell shocked or whatever, and he came up with something. You know, he was a drinker, and
Funny.
even at my grandmother's 60th birthday, my dad's and his sister, you know, my aunts and uncles, any photographs were taken, you had to take the alcohol off the table, because my grandmother despised it because of what it did to her husband, my granddad. So my dad, he had this thing that he just never touched alcohol because, well, he would have been scorned upon. His mum would not have appreciated. And actually, my dad didn't need alcohol. He was such the life and soul of a party, and people used to say, "Is he driving home? He must be pissed." He doesn't drink.
Yeah.
But he, you know, and he had that ability, you know. So, yeah. So that was that really, you know. And then of course, then I come along, and sometimes you say it skips a generation. I hope it doesn't, because I'm sure my grandson's going to be absolutely fine. But you know, it's for me, I think I just got deeper and deeper and further away from my dad because I was being accepted into the crowd. And then things started to change. You know, okay, sure, addicted to heroin, and then, you know, okay, there's no heroin around. So I found out, you know, you find out, okay, well, what about pharmacies? They've got all these methadone, you know, opiate substitute treatments, and there was lots of, you know, drugs in pharmacies. So you used to break into pharmacies, rob all the drugs, you know, and you know, I got caught doing that. And towards the end, the decision was made for me. I was brought kicking and screaming into rehab. I didn't want to go. I was having a great time. But everyone else wanted me to go to rehab.
But before we get to rehab, was there sort of any horror stories or maybe some funny,
God.
you know?
There's loads of horror stories.
Heroin though.
Yeah.
You know, that is, as much as we don't like to sort of rank things, like people, that's the big bad scary one, isn't it? You know, because it's the one that you inject. A lot of people who maybe haven't touched drugs or haven't been around drugs, that's the one that is scarier for some reason, I think.
Particularly now with
yeah.
the synthetic opioids that are being adulterated into, you know, people are dying, you know,
Yeah.
like, and
But at 15, do you know that you're taking one of the like really sort of, did you know when you first started taking it, like this is, yeah.
Look, listen to the music, people, you know,
Yeah.
so many songs about heroin, you know, so you know this is you're playing with fire. But the risky side of me wanted to play with fire. You know, I'll be okay, I'm liking this, and that's what happened. And then
But what was the progression of that like for you, sort of in terms of like when you first tried it to then?
pretty much immediately fell in
Yeah.
with that crowd, that was the heroin crowd, pretty much, yeah.
But as in the amount you're using and how much you liked it, you know, because it's...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like particularly with heroin, your tolerance was, you know, built very quickly, and you're always going to try and chase that high, a little bit like cocaine, which you're a drug of choice.
100%.
You know, you need more of it.
Well, it's mad when I think back to doing it for the first time at 20 and sharing half a gram between 3 to then ordering like 2 8 balls for 1. It's like, what am I, by the end of my using, it's like, And just very quickly going back to Sam, the thing with Sam was, he started to realise himself when he was using cocaine on his own. Oh, yeah.
You know, that's when so it's not out having fun with his mates doing it, or you know, at a club or whatever. He was kind of, you know, and heroin becomes that, you know, you become kind of quite isolated because there is a shame. You do know, to answer your question, you know there's a part of you that shouldn't be doing this. This is really dangerous. What's mum going to think, you know? And at that stage, when you're hooked, you're hooked. So you're running away from withdrawal symptoms all the time. So it's no fun.
Well, this is the other thing. Heroin's physical withdrawals as well, isn't it? So
Yeah,
your body is rattling for that.
Yeah. And that takes, that's the real hard part, and it's actually quite interesting. And I know I talk a lot about heroin with obviously I've got a caseload of about 50 people I look after at the moment, and it's quite a big caseload. And we talk about heroin, and we talk about when you're really in withdrawals, and the aches and the pains, and it's like having COVID multiplied by 10. But as soon as you score, before you've even taken the drug, you start to feel better. You've got your pack in your hand, and you've got to get the bus home to use it.
That's exactly what I was saying about that euphoric feeling of, I know cocaine isn't necessarily physical withdrawals, but I could be on my own coming down, no drugs left. Physically, I'm feeling like that come down. I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I feel awful, like I know what's coming.
Yeah.
There could be no drugs that have now arrived, but a dealer's texting me back, and all of a sudden, I feel fine again.
Yeah.
It is,
and that's the psychological side of addiction, and most people that have been using heroin would say that, yes, once I know I've got that in my hand, I'm going to get well really soon. And all of a sudden the legs don't feel as bad. It's that, and for me, I didn't like, I don't like pain, don't like physical pain, don't like emotional pain, and this cured all of that, And I was in with a crowd of people that I wanted to be with, and I was accepted by them, and it was, the risky behaviours for me were continuing. And then it just got worse and worse and worse, and the criminality was probably what I know. What my family watched me try to kill myself. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that literally. I mean that in my actions.
Did your dad ever sit and have a conversation with you about, and your
My
mum?
dad sat on my bed one day. I was so ill. I was quite high functioning, so I kept the job down. But there was a day where I just couldn't get out of bed. I was just so fed up with it. I was in really bad withdrawals, and my dad came in and sat beside me, and he said, "Son, I'll hold your hand. I'll give up my job and I'll sit here with you. I want to get you through this," So there was lots of conversations. In the early days, I avoided it and lied. But no, I'm not doing that. How dare you say I'm doing that? And my mum would say, I think she noticed I had a white shirt on. There was a couple of little red blotches from where I'd been injecting, and she questioned me on that. And I said, I cut myself shaving. And she accepted that because she didn't really want to know the truth.
Yeah, of course.
And when I used to work as a mechanic, when it came to washing my hands, I'd keep my sleeves down, where normally you'd pull your sleeves up when you're washing all the oil off. So I was trying to hide it, and I worked with a friend of my dad's. He gave me a job, and I knew if he knew or saw that, they all knew. I thought I was fooling everybody.
Yeah.
But they all knew, And I think that then it becomes a life of deceit.
And it's exhausting, keeping up appearances.
Oh my
like
God,
that.
yeah.
Like, you're saying it like that, but like, this sort of like regimented life that I've got to keep my sleeves rolled down. It's the simplest thing, but actually like that times all the other things that you have to implement to make sure you're not going to get, to keep up this appearance of a high functioning drug addict. It is so tiring.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and so that's kind of when things got really bad for me. I got then pretty much methadone became my drug of choice.
Yeah.
So methadone at the time, and still is, is a treatment that, it's a safer way to
It's interesting you say that, because the last person I interviewed, she said that methadone was harder for her to come off than heroin.
Yeah. Oh, I was my drug of choice, became my drug of choice, and guess what?
The liquid form.
Yeah, liquid form. Yeah, and tablet. You used to get them in tablet form, and you could inject them, and they don't really do the tablet form anymore for that particular reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, slightly.
Because guess what? People are cranking them up. The last time I injected an opiate was the day before I went into rehab, and I was supposed to be taking 3 tablets a day, and I had a week's worth. So I had 21 tablets. I just got a 5 ml syringe, crushed them all down into 5, and that was it. And then threw my syringe away and went, "That's it. I'm not doing this anymore."
Lots
that was
of people
methadone
do that
tablets.
before, when they know that they're gonna, when they know the game is up. I was speaking to someone who went to rehab abroad and took coke on the flight because he was like, I know this is going to be this is the last time.
And that's the really dangerous time for people. So just before you go into rehab and just when you leave rehab, if it's well, any drug really these days, because they're all dangerous, it's a very high risk time. You know, because if you're going to have that last bender before you're going. I had to go to rehab because I got into trouble with the police, and it was go to jail or go to rehab. You know, so it's what was called temporary release.
What was that sort of story situation?
I was caught robbing chemists.
Right.
You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
like smashing grabs, things like that. Just you you want that drug, and you don't care who's in the way.
Yeah.
So I got caught being foolishly thinking you're really smart. So the pharmacy that we robbed was about 100 miles outside Dublin. So the next day, my house gets drummed by the police, which was a regular thing, and they searched the car, and there was a sticker off the bloody Bunclody Wexford pharmacy that there was me and 3 other lads did it, but it was my car we used, and they had taken the sticker off, and it was stuck on the carpet. So of course when the police searched the car and found, oh right, okay, so tell me what this is, it was
Game's up.
yeah. And
You couldn't really get out of that one.
Yeah, no, that was it, you know, and I had been, you know, I had racked up quite a lot of offences for driving, you know, a lot of joyriding stuff, a lot of...
Driving is my, that's the one that eats away at me, that one.
Why is that?
Just the always, never, ever having a second thought of getting in a car and driving high.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say,
Yeah.
I'd smash 5 laps. I would do this thing, right, where I would always say, I'd never drink drive. And then I would always drive after doing gear because I always felt like I was a safer driver.
Yeah.
But prior to doing the 5 lines before I get in the car, I've had a skinful of alcohol. But in my head, that's not drink driving because I've sobered up through the coke now. So I'm
absolutely.
Good to go.
That denial, that system that we have.
The convincing yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And so many car crashes written off cars.
I know, yeah. I was quite lucky. I mean, I didn't kill anybody, thank God.
But that's the thing that sits in my head, you know, eats away at me because it is lucky that we didn't.
That's all it was just pure luck.
You know, I never was thinking about... I was so arrogant in the fact that I thought I can drive this car because I can, and I'm safer high than when I'm sober.
Oh yeah, more alert.
Yes.
Yeah, the bullshit. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The culture now of drug driving is a big thing where you swab your steering wheel, you swab your hands, and if you've had a spliff or had any cocaine or whatever it is.
But it was like as soon as I would get back and that didn't happen, you know, so quickly normalised it to myself that, you know, I live in the countryside, no one's going to get me on these lanes. It's just...
And actually back in Dublin at the time, there was a big, you know, you'd often see the police at the end of the evening in the pub having a few pints in their uniform and driving home. Do you know what I mean? I remember I came out of a pub one day and I had my bike outside, my motorbike outside, and I had it locked and I was pissed. I forgot to take the lock off, right? So I set it up, you know, started it up, and I went to drive off, of course, boom, and I fell on the floor. And with that, the police car pulls up beside me. So this would have been 1982, maybe. Leave the bike there, Theo. We'll give you a lift home.
I love it that they know you're on a name basis with them.
Absolutely. They had my photograph at the police station, the local police station.
Most
Watch out for
wanted.
this man. Yeah, you know, search this man as you see him. But they back then, the police, they could have. It was a Sunday morning session we had, you know. And I was boomeranged. I shouldn't have been on the bike. And rather than do me, the culture then was, I'll leave the bike when we bring you home, Theo. Okay, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would happen to you now if that was you? You'd be just taken off in handcuffs and that would be done. You'd be done for it. So I have seen in my years, I've seen a lot of different changes, you know, culturally how, you know.
How drugs are dealt with.
So, I mean, I suppose moving on from that, I got married. I was 15 and my then wife Louise was 14 when we met, so we were, you know,
childhood sweethearts.
Yeah. Sorry?
Childhood sweethearts.
Yeah. You know, the first thing, how I met her was, she was out collecting for a charity called Gortha, which is an Irish word for, it was, you know, it was for poor people. Or what they used to say, and you wouldn't be allowed to say it now, like it would be, you know, for the black babies, it was called, you know, and she was going around, she was, you know, the school had given them all this box to go around and collect money for Gortha. And I stole it off her. And I felt so bad. I don't know whether it was because I'd stolen charity one year, or I'd stolen it from a girl that I actually liked and fancied. So I went and found her and gave it back. And it was probably the first time where my morals, you know, sort of my moral code actually got me to do something right.
Good. Yeah.
So that's how we met. And then that, you know, that kind of progressed. And you know, we got married. She never took drugs, you know.
When you went to rehab, though, was that your first? Did you that work the first time?
There was a lot of community. I did a lot of community detoxes and NA at the time. It still is NA, but they didn't work. So,
can I just ask though, why do you think? Is that because now looking back, because you've got a lot of clean time under your belt now. When you look back, would you say that's because you didn't want to? Like you weren't ready to hand it over. Do you know what I mean? Like you were being forced.
Kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
It was ultimatums, you know. Like, and when I went, and at the time, and it was a really tough regime. The guy Lee Guilfoyle was his name. He was an American. It was his model, and they had used it specifically for the veterans coming back from Vietnam who had all got addicted to heroin. So it was boot camp. You know, like. Your head was shaved, you wore a sign with your behaviour on it. There was lots of things. The rehab then, and it was like 17 months in phase 1. So it's not like, you know, now they do a 12-week stint and whatever, that's rehab. I left after 7 days. I ran, and, you know, I just couldn't, and I got home. And actually, by the time I got home, I think I'd walked about 20 miles. I had talked myself out of it, because it was a craving. I was craving. You know, I had done a month in a lock-up hospital inpatient for detoxing. And that was a month. I was on a very high dose of methadone, and they were trying to get me, I was drinking bottles of methadone, 300-400 mils every day.
Wow.
It was a lot, so my detox was horrendous, and then I was thrown straight in from there, taken in the van to rehab. 7 days I left. I didn't use, but when I got home...
What was a day like back then in a rehab like that?
What was it like?
What was a day like?
Your typical day would be 6:30 in the morning. The light would come on in your dormitory. We had 12 to a dorm. There was 3 male dorms. There was 1 female dorm. You'd be out of the bed. People, from the word go, people would shout. You'd be shouting at you. You know, they'd come. You'd have to make your bed. Have the hospital corners. And if everything wasn't perfect, they'd rip it apart and say, "Do that again." You know,
regimented.
Really, really regimented. You know, and it was really, really tough. And I didn't want that. You know, fuck off, basically. You know, I didn't know.
I don't give a shit how the corners of my pants folded.
I was 20. I was 24 when I went into rehab. So I was very young, Sam's age, which you know, I kind of feel a little bit about that too. But you know, because I was 24. And I just wanted Sam to get out of it at the age he was as well. But rehab was horrendous. Rehab was like, it was from the minute you opened your eyes to the minute you went to bed, there was people, you know, pulling you up on your behaviour, shouting at you, do this, do that again, you'd be out. I ran the kitchen for a while, so you came in department.
Sounds slightly more like prison than...
Well, it was an open prison essentially, because I was supposed to be I was looking at 3 years for doing the pharmacy. So it was like, okay, Mr. Elliott, all your convictions are around driving and around acquisitive crimes for drug dealing and stuff. So your drug problem's the problem. So you can go to jail for it, or we'll give you the opportunity to go to this rehab. And if you leave the rehab, you go back to jail. I'd take me back to jail after 7 days. You know, I want to go to jail. I don't want to do this.
Could you get drugs in jail? Back then, could you get drugs in jail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. It's worse now, I believe, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of how I ended up in rehab. And to answer your question, then after 7 months, I left again. I ran. you know, and that was more about missing my wife, missing my son. Like my Theo was, I think he was about 18 months old when I went into rehab.
For the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I left, I mean, I was back a day later. I didn't have. There wasn't a
Okay.
big gap between when I went, you know, when I left rehab. It was pretty much when I got back to Dublin. You're not coming into this. No, son, sorry, you can't live here. You need to go back. My dad was part of the split committee. He was wanting to take you back. Went up to my house where my wife and son were living, and she says, "No, I can't let you in. You need to go back. I love you, but you're not getting in. You know, you need to go back to rehab." Oh, okay, I'll go back to rehab. And then, actually, after 7 months, the penny dropped, but it took that long for me. I fought it and fought it and fought it. You know, I didn't want to be there. It was all a load of shite, you know what I mean? And you know, but it did take that long. And then, after 17 months, I graduated. No, I didn't. I went into phase 2, which was you spend half the week at home and half the week and you know, sort of they'll kind of ease you back into society. And that's when fellowships became part of my life, because you're back into the community and they say, okay, you want to access services in recovery, there's a list of places to go, you know, NA here, NA there. And I did that for a little while. It wasn't my cup of tea. I threw myself back into my work and I built a business, a car repair and sales business.
There's a lot of people who message me saying that it's not their cup of tea, and I wanna always offer on this podcast, like, it's not a one size fits all recovery, you know, like it's okay if you don't, it's okay, it's all right if something, but in saying that, if the only thing, my only sort of thing about that is that you can only have an opinion on it if you don't like it, if you've tried it. If you can't say, that doesn't look like it's going to work for me.
Absolutely, it is that. You have to,
when you're thinking about starting recovery, you love a barrier. So like, if you see God, you go, no, not going to work. If you see group therapy, no, not going to work.
I don't like talking around people. And oh yeah, absolutely, you know. And I think I was lucky in a sense that, you know, I had absolutely no common sense, but I'm told I'm quite clever, you know. And I kind of understood it, you know, and I could see the benefits from it. And actually, I was at a stage where, you know, God, look, we moved into we got a brand new house in the county council and we moved, myself and my wife and my then son, who was about a year old, whatever. We moved in on the 27th of December, 1986, and the police came through the door on the evening of the 28th to take me away. So I had one day in my new home, in my new, you know, where I lived, and all the neighbours, the curtains were twitching, you know, because it was a brand new house in the state that we had the house in, and I'm the one that has the police cars outside and the door coming in on top of us, and I'm being taken away. So, you know, it impacted everybody, you know. The impact it had on my wife was, you know, like, you know, she gave me lots of chances, you know, and I blew them. Typically, and it's always a lot of, oh, please give me one more chance, please give me one more chance, I swear to God I won't do it again, I'm really, really sorry. They were at my house regularly, you know. They used to wait for me outside the house because you could never catch me on my motorbike, so I'd be coming in at night and locking the bike up and they'd jump over the wall and arrest me for, you did this today, you know. So I did bring an awful lot of heat on my family, you know, my parents' house, my house with Louise, my wife. So that's the kind of the criminality side of it, which, as I said earlier, and I'm probably should be ashamed to admit it, but when I stopped using drugs and got my life together, I had some really bad luck, and the business that I'd built up, and we built a garage, we didn't have proper planning permission, and I wasn't allowed, you know. I had my younger son, my two best mates, and an apprentice. So I had 4 people I was employing, and we all were going to lose our jobs because they were going to close this down. So I got really angry, and I went back to people that I knew, and I got those connections again, and I started selling drugs again. You know, and interestingly, I only sold cannabis for the first few years because that's okay. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to sell heroin because I know what that's like. I'm not going to sell cocaine. That's kind of like. I never did sell heroin, but I got into selling quite large amounts of cocaine, like kilos.
A lot of money in that.
bad. Well, I needed it because I was
Yeah.
a shit drug dealer, and I kept losing. You know,
Yeah.
like I really was. I was.
The ones
like,
that use your own supply, not great.
partly that, but just foolish, just really making really bad decisions, and then oh shit, you know, the police caught 20 kilos belonging to me, and that was 40,000 odd pounds I owed a drug dealer, and I hadn't got it because I used to get it laid on, so I'd sell it and then give them, and I'd make my bit out of it, and so he wanted that. So oh god, what am I going to do now? Oh, I've got a great idea. Some fellow said he had an ecstasy making machine that he wanted to import, and if I gave him 15 grand, he would be able to, you know, farm out these pills at £1 each. And at the time they were selling for about £6, and by the 10,000, I never gave him the money, never saw him.
No.
And then had another fella that this is all in 1994. I lost 100 grand in 1 year.
That's the year I was born.
Sorry?
That's the year I was born. So that
94.
Was a bad year for you.
It was my worst year financially. And then I got into the cocaine business because I owed these guys money, and I wasn't going to make it selling bits and bobs. So and I got into it big time.
What's big time?
5-10 kilos a week.
Okay.
Yeah. 30,000.
How do you infiltrate yourself back into that life? Very easily? Yeah. And were you using coke?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So and I had a little love affair with coke for a while, but I knew I couldn't sustain this because of the addict. Do you know what I mean? So, and I just started going down that road again and telling lies. And my wife, were you using coke? No, I wasn't. How fucking dare you accuse me of using coke? I was flat out on it, you know. So that was kind of. The 80s was heroin, and it was a brief love affair with cocaine in the 90s, you know. But by God, did I sell a lot of it, you know. And then of course the loss is you lose one brick, it's 30 grand, and these guys want their money. And like I said at the very start of this, when we were younger, the drug dealer was your friend, and if you didn't have, I haven't got the money this week, don't worry about it, man. Here, have this, man. You know. The guys that you're dealing with when it came to the 90s, you had that sort of emergence of really organised crime groups running things, paramilitaries. You know, I got in big trouble with the paramilitaries in Ireland over. That's why I live in England, because I had to leave. Actually, I was that afraid because I really put my foot in it with paramilitaries and drug dealers and high-ranking drug dealers. I went to live in San Francisco because it was so far away. I didn't feel safe coming to England. And I just needed to change continent at the time, do you know what I mean? Like, and just get away because, you know, there was
How hard is it then to get out of that sort of stuff? Because I had people messaging me sort of saying, like, I want to stop and I want to and I don't want to do it anymore, but I don't know how to get out of it. And I'm talking about more the dealing side of things here.
They probably owed money, and that money needs to be, you know, like... They don't say no. They don't say, "Oh, you're giving up." Oh, don't worry about that 100 grand you owe me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and things get really surreal. And I was talking about this to a friend of mine recently. I was watching a movie one night. You know Mel Gibson, famous actor. Can't remember the name of the movie, but the whole theme was about he robbed a drug dealer of $50,000, right? And I'm making a movie on it, and I'm sitting watching this at home thinking, "Fuck, I'm about 150 in this shit at the moment." And Mel Gibson's making a movie about it. What have I done?
Yeah.
You know, and you know they want you to. Oh yeah, you owe me the money. Well then, I want you to do this for me. I need a car for this. I want you to got involved.
All of a sudden,
firearms.
you become a
Firearms got involved. And moving firearms around. You know, all this sort of stuff became. You had to do it. You didn't have to do it, but you kind of did. If you didn't,
you die.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean. I don't know whether you watched the coverage, but the gang wars in Ireland at the moment it's calmed down a little bit now, but like 2 organised crime groups got, you know, into big fisticuffs with each other, and there was just shootings every day. And they're talking about kids, you know, young people being shot dead over, you know, debts that they owed, and the drug dealers don't want society to see them as being weak.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they lose the power.
Yeah.
You know, and it did become it became about turf. Where when I was a kid, you didn't mind. You could go anywhere in Dublin and sell your hash or whatever. No one was going to say, this is my turf. That came later, and with the emergence of, you had guys going to jail for 10 years for maybe robbing $2,000 out of the post office, and they're sitting in a cell with someone that's doing 2 years only for being caught with 100 grams worth of hash or coke, and very quickly. That's why organised crime became, hold on, why are we doing a 10 stretch here for a bloody $2,000 jump over when these guys... So that's when, in my view, that's when it became more violent, you know, and dangerous, and you know, and people were getting younger and younger and younger, you know, and everyone has a firearm, everyone's carrying, you know, and it's...
Normalised.
Yeah, pretty much normalised, yeah. So that was, you know, you were asked about horror stories. I mean, you know, there's so many, really, you know, just so many things. And
did you have to do any really bad things to people?
No, it's why I was never a good drug dealer. I wasn't violent, and you know, it's people say you need to make an example out of him. And it's like, you know, he's a human being. Why would I want to? You know, and that's why I failed, because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't violent. I didn't like violence, and I had the gift of the gab. I could talk my way out of pretty much anything, do you know, or so I'm told. But it got to the stage where I wasn't talking my way out of anything, and I think the final crunch was when I felt really bad because a friend of mine had loaned me 50,000. And I wasn't able to pay it back because I hadn't got it. So I robbed a drug dealer to pay him back, you know, and it kind of, that was probably my undoing, because, you know, these guys they murder people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and so.
How did you go about that? Did you through drugs, as in?
Yeah, through drugs. Yeah.
So you were supposed to sell his drugs, but you took the drugs and.
He asked me to mind a load of money for him, so I worked at, like I said, I was always high functioning on work, so I worked in this big business, and I was running an inventory management in a big place, you know, for a warehouse.
Warehouse, yeah.
Yeah. So I was, you know, stashing guns, stashing money, stashing drugs, and this is how I was repaying them. You owe me 50 grand or whatever it was. Mind this, look after that, do this. I need to get that from here to there. And it was all being taken off my bill, you know.
Yeah, so you're doing the work, the risk stuff.
Oh yeah, you know, stuff that I didn't want to be doing.
No.
You know, I really, really didn't. I had that insight from being in rehab to know that this is all wrong. But I was, you know, I was terrified. So I ended up doing a lot of that, and then one day I just got really fed up with it all, and I really had felt that I'd left my friend down by not being able to repay him, and he'd been really good to me about it, and I felt I was losing his respect. And I robbed Peter to pay Paul, and it came down hard on me. Yeah, I tried to talk my way out of it, and there was paramilitary involvement, so you know what they're like. I got kidnapped, I got taken up the mountains, I had the shit kicked out of me, I had a fractured skull, broken arm. I still have marks on my legs where I was hit with battens with nails in them, and I was going to die that night. Only I had 20 grand that I could access pretty much straight away, and I just said, look, I can get you 20 tonight, that's all I can do, give me a few days. Like, they wanted 50, and I said, but you need to drop me in a hospital. So they threw me out of the car. I arranged for them to have the money dropped to them, and then once you got the money, they said okay. I was chucked out outside St. Vincent's Hospital outside of Dublin, and crawled in. When my wife Louise came to visit me that night, she walked right by me. She didn't recognise me. My face was out here. I had been fucking beat badly. And as soon as I was well enough, I was on a plane and I was gone to San Francisco.
Because you didn't have the rest of the money.
Sorry?
Because you didn't have the rest of the money.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't even want to give him that. I'd kind of, like I'd said, I'd given it to my friend who was good enough to loan me the money. Now, that was the proceeds of crime anyway, you know, because his money was. But, you know, he he made his money his way. He wasn't into drug dealing or anything like that, but he could see the predicament I was in, and he was trying to help. And he was making money out of it too. I was giving him, interest on the loan, if you like, and stuff like that. But it all
So
fell
you go
apart.
on a flight to San Francisco,
Yeah,
and what? Just
I had a friend over there.
hunker down until things have calmed down.
Yeah, pretty much just get out, just leave town, and which is what I did. And I met my mum and my brother Eamon, Sam's dad, in Dublin Airport. Said goodbye to them. Flew to Heathrow, took a flight from Heathrow straight to San Fran, and cocaine, San Francisco. I had to leave. I didn't, you know what I mean? It's just like, yeah,
Too nice.
I like a Bacardi and Coke. So
Yeah.
you buy a Bacardi and Coke over here, you get about that much Bacardi, and the rest is Coke. In the States or in San Francisco, it's the other way around. You're up
Free
here
for.
with Bacardi and a little bit of Coke. And you got a little Mexican guy that nudges you and has grams of Peruvian flake for $30. At the time, it was £15. I was getting $2 to a pound at the time. So here I am over here, this place, and it's this guy with the loveliest Coke. Do you know what I mean? Like, for nothing.
Yeah.
And you're on the drink, and you're trying to, I was traumatized. I eventually got a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder after
From being at the mountains and being beaten up.
yeah,
I'm not
I did,
surprised.
and I still suffer with it.
Do
I still,
you?
oh yeah, I don't. My partner Kim will tell you. Anywhere I go, I have to know who's coming. I can't sit with me back to a door. I can't wear headphones and listen to music because I need that sense. And what used to really wear me out a bit with the post-traumatic stress disorder, but driving my car, always looking out for an Irish registered car. How tiring is that?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of graded exposure work. I did a lot of EMDR, which is the treatment. I threw everything at my PTSD. At the end of the day, it affects me. You're not going to forget the trauma. The only reason I knew that night I wasn't going to be killed that night was because I heard one of the guys, about 6 of them around me, they brought me up, there's 2 carloads of them, and I heard one of them saying, "Don't hit him in the head."
So you knew.
So I knew, all right, I'm going to get a gangster's beaten here, but I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
That was probably the worst thing, and that was the end of it. That's I say to people, that's when my marriage broke down. It was in tatters anyway.
I was going to ask you this. So, like, obviously,
Yeah.
You've lived a life of quite risky life, and then you have kind of got sober, but then you go back to the drug dealing. Then this big event happens, and you just go to San Francisco. At this point, you have Theo, you have Louise,
And Stephen,
And
Stephen was
Stephen.
11.
and she's just like,
Well, yeah, I mean, she was really pissed off at me. Like, she really was, Sorry.
I think like.
I don't think she's going to watch this, but it doesn't
No,
matter.
you're not
the
together
bit,
now,
but-
are you?
Sorry?
You're not together. You're still with Louise.
No.
No, right,
that,
okay.
that ended it there. That was
Okay,
it. It was actually, it was over before. For about 3 months before I left the country, I moved out of the house because she was terrified.
Yeah.
She said, "I don't want you getting shot in the bed beside me and for Stephen and Theo to be exposed to it. You
Yeah.
need to leave the house. I don't want that more to do with you."
Mm-hmm.
So I lived with my mum for a while, and my mum and dad went to live with them, and then I started staying in different friends' houses every night, moving around and stuff like that. And,
God.
just kind of,
Tiring.
yeah,
So, when we're at this stage now, emotionally, are you, like, where are you at? Like, do you feel like, how do you feel? Are you sort of like, what is my life? What am I doing?
What keeps me going now is my work. So for me, every time that I...
Sorry, just to
Yep.
say, Theo is a drug support worker. So
Oh, right, sorry,
Should
I'll start-
probably say that.
So I work for a company called Turning Point, which is
Yes.
a national company
Who sponsors this podcast?
who
which is amazing.
we found out sponsors this podcast, and they wanted me to talk about, the work I do, and
I think they know, the ethos of the podcast, which is rigorous honesty. So there's no
absolutely,
no holds
and
barred.
and absolutely there isn't any holds barred with it, but I to answer your question about me redeeming myself.
I think more just like in that moment, is that sort of like the, you know, you then come back from San Fran and you're just hopping around trying not to get.
No, I came from San Francisco to UK.
To here, okay.
Yeah, straight.
And then
I had 200 quid in my pocket and 3 black bags full of clothes. That was all I had in the world, you know. And
where do we go from there?
I stayed with my Louise's dad, who lived in Dorset. So I stayed with them, and him and his wife, they were both, you know, really heavy drinkers. They were kind of relapsing quite a bit, and it was really a bit of a fuck up, really. But I used to watch telly with them. When they'd go to bed, I was given a Z bed to open up, and I'd sleep in the Z bed. I had to get up before they got up in the morning, and I got a job, $5 an hour, working in a forge, and then I got a job as a bus driver, trying to be a bus driver, and I was in the bus park one day, you know, the terminus, and where all the homeless people hang out and they go around butt picking. And I used to say, oh, look, you know, why don't you go over there? There's a place over there you'll get help. You know, homeless shelter, or, you know, a drug and alcohol service. And it was Salisbury I was based at the time.
And you clean at this point?
Sorry? Yeah.
Are you clean?
Oh, yeah.
So as soon as you get back from San Fran, you're done?
Yeah, I have not used any Class A drugs in the time I've been living in this country since 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, with the exception of, no, I have to say that, with the exception of once.
Okay.
I had a couple of lines of coke one night, a few years
How do you do the couple of lines?
I hated my fucking self for it.
Yeah.
You know, I'd let my friend down. He said to me, "Oh, I always put you on a pedestal."
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that story. But before you do that, so you started saying to these homeless people, "Why don't you go to the drug and alcohol support centre?"
Yeah. Yeah, and I start signposting people as a bus driver. I was, you know, when I'd be having my fag, I'd always give them one, or they'd be looking for £1 and have 9 quid. I'll give you £1. Oh yeah, you want to score, and you can't score with 9 quid. You know, I was saying, well, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? So I decided to go back to university, and I did a degree in informal education, youth work, learning and development, and got into young people services. And very quickly could see that young people, I had a knack for helping young people that had drug and alcohol problems, you know, which wouldn't have been heroin, it would have been mainly alcohol and you know, party drugs. So I put my 2 skills together. I was qualified motor mechanic, and I had a bit of world experience, and I put the 2 of them together, and I got some funding from Somerset, Safer Somerset, drug crime reduction teams, and they gave me money, and I ran a project for 5 years in Somerset, building go-karts for kids that were excluded from schools. So they were getting their education through me. I was teaching them how to fix cars and how to fix motorbikes. And if you want to learn how to fix that, to drive it, you're going to have to learn how to read, because there's the manual. You need to learn, this is what you need. If you want to measure that, to cut that piece, you need to know your sums. So all of a sudden young people realised that didn't want to go to school and thought school sucks. Oh, and that's the reason for it. So all of a sudden they're trying to read the books, and I want to get that go-kart going. And I go, well, there you go, you know. And it was really successful, and I won Safer Somerset Awards 2008. I beat the local police. They came second. I came first at reducing youth crime in Somerset in 2008. And they pissed right off about that, they were. So that was kind of, I started doing all these things. So, you know, studied, went back to school, held down a job.
But what about the relationship with your own kids? Has that been?
3.
Yeah.
Not always, but is now.
Yeah.
Not always, but is now, yeah. I mean, my middle son, Stephen, everyone used to say I gave birth to him. Stephen loved being with me. You know, from a very young age, he was stuck to me. I used to have to collect him from school. I'd put him on the tank of my motorbike and take him to school, and he'd always come with me. And it broke his heart when I had to leave when I had to leave town. It broke his heart, and he cried his eyes out. And so this is completely true. He never cried since until Sam died. So, and he's 35 now. So for what's that? He was 11. So, you know, for all those years, he never cried. He never, ever cried after I left. He cried when I left, but then that was it. Never cried about anything ever again, until the day we were in the church saying goodbye to Sam, and he cried again. You know, so that was quite
poignant.
My older son Theo, you know, I let him down. You know, I wasn't around. I was a distant dad. I was a heroin addict. You know, I wasn't at home doing my bit. I did a little bit, but I didn't show 'em. You know, I wasn't a family man in a sense. I thought I was, but not in my actions. I wasn't. So that was a bit of a journey. And then he actually lives over here. He came to my eldest son Theo actually came to live with me years ago because there was no work in Ireland. The Celtic Tiger had panned out, and he was depressed in bed and hated the world. And his mum says, "Off you go over to your dad." He came over to me, met a lovely girl. Started his own business as a carpenter, has bought his own house now, has T5, we call him Theo the Fifth. Yeah, it
Takes time.
big time, yeah, you know, we're absolutely. And then I've got a daughter who's 18 now, so from a relationship I had, how I ended up in Oxford actually, dating site, stuff like that, and, you know, don't forget, I was 15 when I had the one and only woman in my life. So when we separated, I was like 19, going out dating all the time.
Yeah.
And I met this girl briefly, and she got pregnant. So I have a daughter. So I decided I used to drive up and down from Somerset every weekend to see her, to bring her back down to have her for the weekend. And I just thought, fuck this, I'm moving to Oxford. It's to be closer to her, because she was in her, 6 years ago. So she was 12, going on 13, and thought, Dad needs to be around maybe a little bit, not just be so distant. And we have a wonderful relationship. She is so proud that I'm doing this today. You know, and that's
She
Anna.
should be.
Yeah, you know, so yeah.
But that's the stuff you get back, right? You know, like.
Oh yeah, you had to work for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, trust is earned.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
trust is earned.
You know, like, when you think of it, I think a lot of people who have struggled with this stuff, you know, the service, the giving back, it's quite a natural path for a lot of people who have fallen into substance misuse. You do, when you find the thing, you want everyone to have the thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You want everyone to sort of be able to, just have the colour back in their life a bit, and it just,
Yeah, well, I mean, my rehab was a concept-based rehab, and I remember all the concepts. I think one of the main concepts that I live by these days, especially, is in order to keep it, you have to give it away, right? So in order for me to stay drug and alcohol free, or drug free, I do drink, but not much, I have to give it to other people. So every day I go to work and I sit down and do a key working session with someone, and I'm not going to be phony and go out and use that night. Do you know what I mean? You just wouldn't, you know. So for me, that concept was the one that got me on that track of, and then, guess what? Drug services, Turning Point, and all these places. Your CV is, yes, I've been to prison. Yes, I dealt in drugs. Yes, I had hepatitis C from IV drug using. You know, like, so your skill set is really, because people want you. You're the guy.
Any other job position, it'd be like, But
no,
this
exactly.
one, it's like, you're perfect.
Oh, and you were in prison. Yeah, exactly. So for me, that was, and it's true.
Yeah.
Do you know, because
all the qualifications.
I do want to say a big shout out to people who work in drug services that aren't in recovery, because they get a raw deal.
Yeah.
Most people will want to work with someone who's been there.
Lived experience,
That's
I think.
not judgmental. How can
Yeah.
I be judgmental?
Yeah.
You know, I had one of my clients the other day. She's at the robbing a London gang dealer for 20,000, and she's, and she said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I said, look, I'm not going to judge. She was all apologetic to me, and I said, look, I robbed drug dealers for a living. I'm not judging you here, but I tell you what, you need to get the fuck out of town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so this is just one phone call in my day in the week of working, So I have a real strong passion to, every time I hand a prescription to somebody, I'm snatching that money out of the cartel's hands, out of the organised crime group's hands, because fuck them. That's my attitude. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what gets me out of bed. And when I see someone get clean, and a guy that got clean recently, and he'd save up £19,000 for a new van in the space of his 2 years that he came in and did his treatment with me, or with Turning Point, but I was his key worker. And this is a guy that found his wife hanging. So this guy had trauma. but absolutely, you know, they come in and see me now, and they want to. Can I give you a drug screen, Theo? I said, I don't need one. I know by the head in you're not using. But they'd want that, look, you know, the drug screen, you know, evidence. It's evidence, you know. And I go, okay. You know, a lot of my work, unfortunately, is, I did a brief period, I had about 5 years where I fostered children for Dorset County Council. And on the back of that, in the position I work with now, I do a lot of family work, so I carry a caseload of, you know, mothers that are using crack cocaine and heroin, families that are on child protection plans because dad's fucking, you know, drugs are being found in the house, or, you know. So I do a lot of that work. So there's kind of a lot of bows to my belt, if you like, that, you know. And I'm coming up on 62. I've had a life. I've lived it. Not all of it's been bad. I feel now that because I've done 20 odd years, 25 years now, not breaking the law, with the exception of maybe speeding or whatever, do you know what I mean? And not selling drugs, you know, it's kind of balanced out my life.
Yeah.
You know, because it started when I was 12, so there was 50 years, you know, and 25 of that was drug using and criminality, and the next 25 have been doing everything that's not that. And England's been very good to me, you know, and that's, I'm very lucky, you know, yeah. So that's kind of that bit of it.
You mentioned that you still drink. Is that, do you get judged for that? Do you feel, no?
You never had a problem with that? Never had a problem with drinking. I actually, no, I mean, and very quickly I'll tell you, there was two types of people in Dublin back then. My peer groups, you'd get half would be in the pub and popping in and out of the bookies doing bets. That was their thing. The other half was us guys getting stoned watching MTV or Terminator 2, and you know, so there was a definite divide between the drinkers and the, you know, and the drug users. And I don't really like alcohol. No. You know, I don't like. I like a Bacardi, and but I don't get judged by it. No, you know. You know, like if I'm out somewhere and someone passes me a spliff, I might have a drag out of a spliff. Yeah, no problem, because I didn't have a problem with them. Yeah. And it's, you know, life's changing. You know, like there's a whole different, a bigger viewpoint out there. So no, I don't get upset if people. I don't get judged for having a drink. You know, and I think that's what we talked about briefly on the phone the other day, is about the difference between the fellowships, which can be very much abstinence, oh, you can't do anything, you know. And I think that's hard to ask a 24-year-old like Sam, you know, to do. Yeah. So the compromise with Sam when he came over was no alcohol, no cocaine, but he likes his weed. And I said, okay, the compromise is, and his dad knew that if we were going to take the weed away as well, he wouldn't have stuck to 60 days with me, you know. So that was a compromise, and we could always come back to that. Let's look at the problematic drug use. That's the alcohol and the cocaine.
Yeah, the one that you're using to really fucking change the way you feel and escape things.
So different people have different views on it. Yeah. You know, whether
I'm interested in it. I mean, I have mine was, you know, like you were saying, this rock bottom. You know, like I shouldn't have survived the last sort of using that I did. I've gone on this journey now where I've promised myself a year total abstinence, but I am very interested in mushrooms and psilocybin for my ADHD.
Right.
I find it very interesting, and I'm kind of in my head having this debate of like, you know, this. What is a bad drug? Because I take a medication every day for my ADHD. It's like, well, that's a pharmaceutical run by the government. Yeah. That's something from the ground that is grown.
Same with weed, isn't it?
It's the same with weed. And I think that, but in saying that, it's such a personal journey. You can't, in saying that, I have done a year of total abstinence. But then someone might say to me, well, have you? Because you take ADHD medication.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, I mean, like, they just need to snap out of it, really. You know, I mean, and this is where you have to draw the line. Yeah. You know, and the work I do, I mentioned I work in 3 different GP practices, and a lot of the work we do is specialist prescribing. So there's that argument. Well,
can you just explain to everyone else, sorry, what's about specialist prescribing?
Yeah, of course I can. So there's a thing called opiate substitute treatment, which Turning Point are, you know, really good at doing. And what we do is we start off with harm reduction. So someone comes into us, they're addicted to heroin, they want to get off it, we put them on methadone, which is it mimics what heroin does. So straight away then you've got someone in the service, right? So you give them methadone, you don't have to go stealing, you don't have to go scoring, you don't have to go selling. Here, we're going to give you this stuff, and you won't feel withdrawals. And that's what starts. That starts that relationship with your client, right? Why did we do it? I had a social worker ask me recently, are you not increasing the risk of them overdosing by giving them a very strong opiate? And I say, yes, we actually are. But what we do behind the scenes, the risk assessing, the risk managing, how we manage the giving out methadone, it's really well regulated. It used to be when I was, but it's really well regulated now, and it starts that journey of harm reduction. So straight away, you're
taking away the needle side of it as well.
Yeah. So straight away, you don't have to inject anymore. So you're not going to get hepatitis C or HIV or hepatitis B. These are all things that are common with around drug users, IV drug users. So you're not doing that anymore. You're not breaking the law. You're not filling the jails up. I mean, they're letting people go. I don't know whether you know, but England's jails are fucked at the moment. They're just letting people go out of jail, because there's no room. It's crazy. So what do you do? How do you tackle that in the bigger picture? Probably 75% of people in jail is drug related. That's a big chunk. So if you can get people off that sort of, the illegal side, and stop the money making, it's a big money, it's a big business. It's multi-billion-pound business, and you get someone on methadone that they don't need to buy the shit off the dealers, and then you start introducing them to themselves. They start finding out about themselves. We Turning Point's very good at that. Our model is really good. It's not just a scripting service. A lot of services just give them the methadone script and don't do anything. We are a recovery service. We want people to recover. We get in the hole with people, and here, I found the way out of this hole. I'm going to jump into the hole, but I'm going to get you out. Do you want to go on this journey? Of course they do, because our lives are ruined. But they've got HIV, or they've got all sorts of whatever. Their life's ruined. They can't find a way out. And this is why I wanted to say about, as much as people who are not in, who work in drug services but haven't been affected by drugs themselves, it's just that extra little bit when someone sits down and talks to somebody that I know the way out. I know how to get out of this hole. Yeah. So that's a lot of what we do.
I think lived experience is really important for
absolutely,
people.
But I don't want to judge the people who don't. Yeah, no, I don't mean you. I wouldn't want people listening to this who are drug workers that they never had a problem with drugs themselves. There's some bloody good workers out there. But it works maybe that little bit. It just breaks down one. People don't like being judged. People.
Well, the other thing is that when you first go into recovery, you think you're the worst addict. You've done the worst things.
Yeah.
And then
shame.
And then you sit. Yeah. And you sit with other people, and you're like, oh right. Oh, other people have done that, or someone has done something worse. I mean, all of a sudden, it sort of levels you out, I suppose, with the other people that you're talking with, because you can, share war stories or whatever it is you're doing, and you're like, oh, okay. So it's like I'm not. I mean, that's not great, but I've not.
But like the girl that rang me the other day, and she said to she's in the shit. She owes this guy 20 grand. He's, she buried her head in the sand, and he's actively looking for her, and she's gonna get hurt. Do you know? I mean, but like.
And how do you deal with the emotional side of stuff like that? Obviously, you must can attach to certain people.
Yeah, your professional boundaries need to be. You do. It's very easy. It's like we talked about with the 13 steppers, right? Yeah. It's very easy for, maybe if you come into my service and I was, and I was showing you that, and you were looking up to me because, he knows what. And all of a sudden then, there's so many love stories happen in rehab. It's fucking ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, people go to rehab and they meet someone, oh, you're in rehab, are you? And they fall. It's not love. They just. They're both vulnerable.
It's the first time you're being vulnerable in a group setting, probably.
Yeah.
And you just look at the other person, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And that can be a problem where, like I said to you earlier, when people relapse, they don't want to tell me they've relapsed because they feel they've let me down. Oh, I didn't want to tell. because because we're we're motivators. When people come in, we always go, well done, look at that clean screen, well done you. It was probably his sister's piss that he, I mean, they'll avoid the drug screen, particularly when they're open to social care. But rather than come in and say I fucked up, they'll try and hide it because they're ashamed, or they feel they've let me down, or their worker down, and that's not the case. But that's the problem. Do you know what I mean? Because as humans, we want to be liked, like we talked about at the very start of this, and we want to be liked. We want people to like us and blah blah blah, and that's what happens. So the opiate side, it's only one side of it. There's a lot. We've got obviously Turning Point does an awful lot of other stuff too. I'm pretty much opiate all mine 50 on at the moment, they're all on OST, but they'll have polydrug use, they'll have problems. Most of them, 90% of the people that take heroin are now obviously addicted to crack cocaine as well, because it's like going to Tesco's. There you get 2 dark and 1 free white off the dealer. 2 dark is 2 packs of heroin, 1 white, and the phone systems, you know what it's like. It's like Uber. You know what I mean?
It's the same for me with benzos. It was like the dealer realised like, oh, coke keeps them up, keeps them alive. Yeah. So I'll give them some sleeping pills. For free. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're not free. Then you've got a problem. Which is the old story, isn't it? It's how they really get in. So I mean, we do see a lot of that, but primarily, we still work the harm reduction. You can't just sit down and tell someone to stop using drugs.
What about Buvidal? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, of course I have.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it.
Why is that?
Because they stick an implant in you and send you off, and you might have to come back a month later. Where's the psychosocial work? Yeah. When someone's coming in every 2 weeks for their script.
Someone who had it. She came for an interview a couple of weeks ago. She said it saves her life, but she does NA alongside, CA alongside of it. So she's kind of got that. But she said it was amazing for her.
It works for people short term. I don't think. I mean,
it's just a blocker, right? Like Subutex.
It is Subutex. It's buprenorphine. Yeah, that's the drug. But personally, I think I might have got one of my clients to try it. Because I didn't feel right. You don't just give someone a month's worth or whatever it is and to go. Because all you're doing is just feeding the addiction. You need to do the psychosocial work. You need to do the steps if it's NACA. You need to do your cost benefit analysis. All the things we do, manage our cravings. Go to your relapse prevention group. We do great groups. Relapse prevention, showing people smart recovery. We do a lot of smart recovery. If you've got someone that's just coming in to see you once a month and having an implant, there's no change. No. You just swap the substance for a safer one, which kind of it's better than nothing, but it's not the end game. The end game.
No, it's a quick fix.
Absolutely, literally. So
plaster over a wound.
Yeah. Sorry.
Plaster over a wound.
Absolutely.
Just.
Oh yeah. So to answer your question, personally, I don't promote it, and I think Turning Point maybe tried it, and certainly in Oxford, I don't think it's had great success. I'm sure it's had some success, but to answer your question, it wouldn't be my cup of tea. But everyone has the choice. It'll be offered to everybody, so that's Buvidal. Buprenorphine, generally speaking, is a much better. There's an awful lot of arguments about this.
Is there? Yeah. Do you find that you come across with your work quite a lot of conflict on the best way, or it should be done this way or that way? Yeah, you do get. You do. I mean, some people think the gold standard for OST is methadone. I totally disagree. Yeah. Do it's not. It's a really hard drug to get off. Where buprenorphine is not, and you don't get the high. It stops the withdrawals. It's a blocker. So if you use on top, you might as well just set fire to the money because you ain't going to get hit off it. There's a lot less children accidentally overdosing on mommy and daddy's Buvidal or buprenorphine, whereas we do get kids that drink methadone and die. There's a lot of differences, between the two. I personally. What I try to do, and I'm doing okay at it, is getting all my people moved over from methadone to buprenorphine. When it comes to reducing off it altogether,
I was down to 2 mils a day in that lock-up hospital I was in, and 2 mils is like nothing, and you're licking it out of the back of the, and it's just psychological at that stage. But you can go right down to 0.2 milligram of buprenorphine. So at the 0.4s and the 0.2s, if you're drug screening them, you should be seeing buprenorphine, but you're not sometimes because we know we're taking them because they're supervised at the pharmacy, but that's such a low dose. And it can step off a lot easier than people step off methadone. So my argument is buprenorphine is the gold standard.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a big world out there of right and wrong, but really I think that, it's down to the individual, isn't it? It's the individual.
We're all different.
But I would say that addiction is a disease of the mind, for sure. No?
Yeah, but obviously there's a physical addiction.
Obviously the substance, for sure, with something like heroin or alcohol, but...
Yeah. I know, it is.
And psychological, but I would say self-worth, a lot of it, self-worth,
Yeah,
how you think about yourself.
I know about my story. I took drugs to fit in because
Yeah.
I didn't like myself, because I didn't think I was ever going to be anything like my dad. So a big problem with me all my life, and I still suffer with it, is I just think I don't deserve. And I've come from a family that there's 4 children, and I can't blame my upbringing, because I've got a sister and a brother who never touched drugs or drink in their life, and I've got me and one of my brothers who's a raving alcoholic. Do you know what I mean? But we all grew up in the same house, so it wasn't like we were treated differently. So it's not the nature side of it, it's what's in here, how you feel about yourself, low self-esteem, no confidence, have a few drinks or have a line of something, you fucking go talk to anybody, do you know what I mean? And the pros outweigh the cons in the early days, but then slowly but surely it tilts the other
it's
way.
bad, isn't it?
And you know that,
it provides you with everything that you think is missing. But again, you don't think about this stuff when you're doing it. This is all the hindsight that you get from recovery. You don't think. No one takes a line or a drink or a hit and goes, "Oh, I want to be a drug addict."
Oh no, absolutely not.
No one's thinking that.
Yeah, we don't want to be dependent on it.
No.
And that's that recreational use. Big thing in with alcohol is when people come and they have alcohol problems and talk to me about it, I'd say, well, do you want abstinence or do you want controlled drinking? Most of them want, you tell a 24-year-old like Sam he's never going to have a drink again in his life. That's fucking, that concept doesn't.
No.
You know what I mean?
That's what the program does to you.
Yeah, and actually, it may not be the case, because maybe some people can actually, as they grow older, get more mature or have more responsibilities, can have a drink on a Friday night but not have to.
The thing is, though, is the program makes you feel that even if you were to try, that you failed. So now, if I was to just try and have a glass of wine, or what, I'm never going to know, because I'm too scared, because I don't want to. And I don't know, it's hard that, because it makes it feel, I don't know, it makes it feel like it's final, it's forever, it's never going to.
That's what I mean, and that's when you're 24, that's a hard thing to swallow, you know. So that's why, there are people, people like you mentioned to me, oh, do you drink? And I said, well, yeah. Do you know what I mean? I don't drink much, I actually did a whole dry January for Sam. Just.
No. How long have you been sober then? From heroin?
38 years on the 30th of March.
Wow.
On the 30th of March, 1987, I was given my last 2 ml dose of methadone.
Amazing.
And then, haven't, I really struggled, because some people really think, oh, you can never have painkillers again. I spent a load of money on my fucking teeth recently. I had 6 implants put in, and here's me thinking, oh, I need some Cocodamol, or I need some codeine, or whatever, and I had this big problem in my head about it, and then at the end of the day I said, you know what, I'm in fucking pain, I need some painkillers. So I went and got some codeine. The doctor gave me a benzo to kind of a 2 ml diazepam to relax me when I was in the chair, because I fucking, it was horrible. But if I'm gonna lose a leg tomorrow, I'm not gonna, there was a time I turned and said, don't give me any morphine, and probably die of the pain. You know, so you have to be realistic.
Yeah.
You know,
Some
and
people say to me, "Oh,
I've
do
got
you still
people
have
in AA.
paracetamol?" I think, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I do.
I went out with a lot of guys one night years ago when I was working in pool, and one of them was in NA, and he didn't eat his pudding, his dessert, because it was made with wine or with sherry, or, you know, it was like, I don't know, a tiramisu or something, but oh no, because there's like that, you know, whatever alcohol is in it, it's fucking minimal.
Well, it gets burnt off anyway, most of the time, if you're making a sauce or a jus.
Well, this is it, but that's, some people feel they need to be that regimented.
Some people are like that.
If I eat that cake, all of a sudden I've lost all those days that I've made, and you haven't.
You
haven't lost a day.
That's the side to the fellowship that I think people, where it can get.
And don't get me wrong, the Minnesota model, it's been around as long as, you know, it's been probably one of the first, fellowships, and probably, you know, came before any other type of recovery, like therapeutic communities. You know, it's been around for a long time, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. No. But equally, therapeutic communities aren't other people's cup of tea. It worked for me big time. I got it. I understood the concepts, you know, and now live by them, you know. And first, the day I get out of bed and not make my bed before I come downstairs is the day I'll fuck up. Yeah. Because I've been conditioned since 1987. It's like software has been taken out with the drug problems in it, and the new software has gone in. But I have to keep going.
It's a daily reprieve.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm like that with my gratitude at the end of the night. You know, I sit at the end of my bed and I have this ritual that I do, and it's like a thing now. You know, and I kind of have this weird thing of, if I don't do it, I'll be scorned or something bad will happen to me, which I'm just, I'm working through that.
You're not a Catholic, are you?
No, I'm not. But
because the whole guilt thing is like...
My sponsor was like, you do know, like, nothing's bad going to happen if you don't do that one night because you're tired or something. And I was like, no, I know, but it's that, I don't know. Because it's really helped keep me sober. I don't want to...
Yeah, and what I can say is as you get more time under your belt, it does start to become a little bit less of it. Oh my God, I didn't do this today. I didn't make my bed, or you know what I mean? Because they were all the things. The first thing you were taught to do when you went to rehab was fucking, follow up after yourself, no matter where you're. If you got up and left this room and left that glass there,
I would be awful in that setting because I got ADHD. I'm so messy.
And I did watch some of your podcasts. I did want, I think a lot of ADHD and a lot of stuff about ADHD in adults now that went undiagnosed. So. Yeah. But it is, you self-medicate. Yeah. Like when I was doing my youth work degree, all the kids I was working with that were chucked out of school were Asperger's syndrome, ADHD. Yeah. And then you wondered why they already feel that they don't fit in. And when they drink alcohol or whatever, or take whatever they take, Well,
it makes your brain go quiet, but as a child, if you don't talk about the fact that you have an overactive mind, because you don't know if anyone else does, so then when you take something and it goes, you're like, and then you're looking around thinking, why is everyone so erratic on coke? I'm just like, fuck it, this is great. My brain is like, vroom.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate enough. I don't think I never had a diagnosis. No. Like, I actually did. I had one diagnosis, and it was. I suppose what they might call it now is an antisocial behaviour disorder or something, but my probation officer, because I was so young and using Class A drugs, and I was involved in large scale robberies.
Fair amount of crime.
But I had to go and have this assessment done in the Dundrum Mental Asylum, right? Which is a big, huge asylum that houses IRA men and stuff like that. And because it's a big, huge, bloody lock-up place. And I had to go in there in a van at 15 or 16 to have this assessment done. And basically, that's what I was told. If you're a fucking antisocial, I'm not antisocial.
No.
I wanted to live up to that. Oh, well, if he says I'm antisocial, and of course you walk out. What did he say? Oh, I'm antisocial. Been after 16, it's stupid. But that didn't help me. No. That just made things worse. I had to live up to it.
Live up to it.
Yeah, and you wanted to be, when you're especially young, you wanted to be the big I am. Maybe sometimes I still do want to be the big I am, but I know it's not.
It's not going to help me.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Before we finish,
we
just need to have a quick chat about Jude, Sam's brother.
Yeah. So, as you know, Jude, Sam was his idol. Jude loved the worshipped his brother. So what he's decided to do for Sam, but for the Beaumont Hospital where Sam was, well looked after when he had his accident, he's doing a 100-kilometre run over the course of March. So that starts tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 1st of March. He's going to be running. He might do 5 kilometres one day, 10 the next, and some of his friends are doing it with him. So it's to raise money for Beaumont Hospital, which is in North Dublin, and it's the where you go when you have acquired brain injuries. They were fantastic. And how do we get the word out?
Well, we're going to do this. This is downloaded 10,000 times a week, so that's a good start.
Right.
I just want everyone to know that we're going to get the link into the show notes. So if
you do that,
yes,
please? Because I'm a dinosaur when it comes.
Oh no, I'll do that. Don't worry, I know that. I'll do
right.
that.
Yeah,
so we're going to put the link that Jude has been sending around. That will go into the show notes. So if anyone does have anything they can spare, please do. I know it's effort to go to the show notes and click the link, but it's for a really good cause. And Sam, was a big part of my year of recovery, and it's actually been the most amazing thing now to, off the back of something so sad, be able to sit and talk with you and have that connection with Jude and Rhiannon and Eamon and Samantha. But
I know.
at the same time,
know,
it's a 24-year-old guy who went out on a bike ride and
never came home.
Yeah. So the staff, lots of people are always very quick to complain, myself included, when things go wrong. Your meal isn't on time, whatever it is. But when good things happen, we don't make a song and dance about it enough. And those members of staff at that hospital, people can shout about the NHS and they're not this and they're not that. In this circumstance, they were it, and they were amazing. And they supported you guys through 12 days of hell, I'm sure.
They did. They were fantastic. They, like I said, they talked as if Sam was in the room with us, and that he wasn't having a catastrophic brain injury. And they were lovely to Eamon and Samantha and all of us. Absolutely, I can completely understand why Jude wants to do that, So thank you you can attach that link.
We absolutely will.
As Bob Geldof used to say when Bob Geldof, when he did the live aid, give us your fucking money.
Yeah, not being funny, guys. Fucking cough up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a good cause.
And it could happen, it could be your son, daughter, brother, sister,
Very true.
So, always remember that. And before I go, can I just say one more thing? And that's just about there's free drug services all over this country, Not just Turning Point, there's lots of them, and they're free, and they're run by people like myself, and I hope I gave a good impression of myself today. We just want to help each other. It's in order to keep it, you have to give it away. So it's helping me. When I'm helping somebody, I'm helping me. And thank you for your time. Unless there's something more you want to talk about, but I think I've probably gone over.
We've done 20 seconds over, which is not bad.
That's all right then, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for coming on and being a Class A person. You're fab.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it.